Last time we spoke about the benefits of having Dhamma. This time, today, we'd like to speak about the having of Dhamma, about having Dhamma. And in the third talk, we will speak about using Dhamma. So what this is all about is reaping the benefits of Dhamma. In order to benefit from Dhamma, it is necessary to have it. If you don't have it, there's no way you can benefit from it. And it is impossible to benefit from it if we don't use it. So we spoke first about the benefits. Today we'll speak about having it, and then tomorrow about using it, about using Dhamma. In order to know something, we need to have a taste of it. To know what the Dhamma is, we need to taste it and experience it. We can use a material metaphor for this of money. We don't really know what money is until we have some and have some experience of the benefits or the usefulness of money. So with Dhamma, we need to have it and have a taste of its benefits in order to understand what it is. The flavor of Dhamma is what we need to talk about now. The flavor or taste of Dhamma is known as vimutti. Vimutti. This is another Pali word that you would do well to know. Vimutti can mean deliverance, or salvation, or transcendence. So the flavor of Dhamma is deliverance or salvation, vimutti. And the summation of vimutti is coolness. This coolness is the coolness of life, of a life that is free of affliction, disturbances, annoyances, problems, and dukkha. So this is the flavor of Dhamma, vimutti, and that flavor is cool, free of affliction, free of conflict, free of dukkha. When we speak of the taste of Dhamma, that is a cool life, this may sound strange to you. This may sound funny to your ears. But the meaning here is very, very special and necessary to understand. When we're talking about a cool life, we mean the life that is free of pain, suffering, problems, life that is cool because it is free of dukkha. When we say cool, now be very, very careful. We're not talking about the cool of air conditioners. We're talking, when we say cool, what we mean is that it is without heat. There is no hotness, no fire, no burning. But don't think that we're talking about cold. The cool life is not where we live when we live in Scandinavia or at the South Pole. The cool life is neither hot nor cold. So when we say cool, we don't mean that it is cold, because when it is cold, then this is dukkha also. Cold is dukkha because we have to struggle and fight to warm ourselves and keep ourselves clothed and protect ourselves from that coldness. So the meaning of the cool life is life that is neither hot nor cold, free of the dukkha of hotness and the dukkha of coldness. So this is what we're talking about when we say the taste of Dhamma is the cool life. In Thai there are two words, now and yen, which are roughly equivalent to the English words cold and cool. Ajahn Buddhadasa isn't sure of this, but I think they're close enough. Cold is difficult and dangerous. This is something we all know. But cool is comfortable and free of problems. Cool is very pleasant. It's safe. There's no danger in coolness. So, the difference between the words cold and cool should help you to understand what the taste of Dhamma is. Now, it might be a little funny for you that the highest thing in Buddhism is Nibana. You may be more familiar with the Sanskrit word nirvana, but in Pali we say Nibana. Both of these words mean the same thing: coolness, cool. This is the highest thing in Buddhism, Nibana, or coolness. This is the flavor of Dhamma. This is what vimutti is, when there is deliverance from all dukkha, all suffering, all problems. This is cool. And so this may be unfamiliar to you as a worthy object of your lives. But in fact, this is the highest thing there is. Nibana, coolness, salvation from problems. Now, when we speak of this coolness of Nibana, we're speaking of spiritual coolness. Don't confuse it with physical coolness or mental coolness. But we're speaking of spiritual coolness. Now we'd like to take a little time out to say a few words about the technical language that we're using here. Now for us, these words may be quite strange and new. But we have to realize that in the time of the Buddha, that the various sages, monks, ascetics, philosophers, and other spiritual seekers in India at that time, that when they had deep spiritual experiences, they had to find some words to express that in order to share that experience with others. Now, if they went and used words that nobody had ever heard before, it would be very, very difficult, because ordinary people would never be able to figure out what those words meant. So when these these sages, and the Buddha in particular, spoke, instead of using fancy words that they made up on their own, they used everyday words. They borrowed their terms from the ordinary lives of most people. So they used these common words. And so these words both have a common everyday meaning and also a deep spiritual meaning. And so the words we use here originally were everyday common words, such as coolness. But this word also has a deep spiritual meaning, which we need to understand without confusing the two, without confusing the everyday meaning with the spiritual meaning. So we hope that you'll allow us to take up some of your time to go into this matter of some of the technical meanings of some of these words. For example, when they used to take burning charcoals out of an oven or out of a fire, then as that charcoal would become cool and it would lose its red glow, this process, or that when it became cool, was known as Nibana in India before the Buddha's time. When the mother of the house or the cook makes soup, it's too hot to eat. We must wait for it to Nibana before we can eat it. So the soup must Nibana for us to eat it. This was a very common usage. This was the common ordinary use of the word Nibana back in the old days. Or the goldsmith in his shop, after he would use his forge and bellows to make the gold molten, make it into a liquid, then he would pour it into a form, and then would sprinkle water over it to cool it. And so the goldsmith had to make the gold Nibana. The gold had to Nibana again for it to become a metal that can be picked up and used. So this is another common use of the word Nibana. So these first two examples were material examples of inanimate things. Now let's use an example of living creatures. When a wild animal, such as an elephant or a wild bull or a wolf, is captured, at that point it is a very dangerous animal, and humans must be very, very careful of it. But after the animal is captured, it can be trained and tamed. And after a while, the animal loses its dangerousness, loses its wildness and fierceness, and becomes tame. And so in the end, the animal that used to be a wild jungle beast becomes the same as a cat or a dog. And this condition is called Nibana. Or we can say that we have to Nibana the wild animals to make them tame, to make them cool. This is another example of the word Nibana and its usage. Now let's take a human example. For human beings, life is a series of difficulties, of work, of effort, of slaving in order to get the things we need to maintain life. This is a long, long, difficult process. The business of life is difficult. It takes a lot of our energy and time. But when someone has successfully completed the business of life, then they can be free of many of these problems. For example, someone who has run their family business well, it is developed well, they have a good house, all the furniture and clothing and possessions they need, children, grandchildren, nephews and nieces to run the business and carry on the family. When all these things have been taken care of, when all this business of life has been arranged, then that person can put on a white pair of shoes and white trousers and a white shirt and carry a white umbrella and spend the days or the evenings strolling up and down along the river. From the ordinary point of view of most people, this is Nibana, to have successfully completed the business of life, so that in one's old age one can quietly walk up and down along the river in one's white suit. This is another meaning of the word Nibana. Now when our old elderly gentleman in his white suit, who has retired from his thriving business, has a big family to look after him, his health is still pretty good, he's got a comfortable house, a nice Mercedes and everything, and a nice river to walk up and down along. This is worldly success. This is worldly Nibana. So one day he's walking up and down along the river, and he meets the Buddha. And they say hello. And the elderly gentleman in his white suit says that he's taken care of all the things he had to do, and he has found Nibana. And the Buddha replied, well, maybe that's your kind of Nibana, but that's not the Nibana of the perfected ones or of the noble ones. The Buddha said, that's not the Nibana of the Tathagata. The Tathagata is the one thus come, which is how the Buddha referred to himself. So the Buddha said that kind of Nibana is not the Nibana of the noble ones, of the Tathagata. So then the man said, but I've got a nice house, and the business is doing fine, and now I don't have to worry about it. And I've good health, many children, money in the bank. I belong to a nice country club. He said, what else can there be? And the Buddha asked him, do you ever get angry? Are you ever greedy? Are you ever stupid or foolish? He said, and especially, are you ever afraid of dying? The man said, oh, sometimes. He said, the Buddha went on to say that for the noble ones, for the Ariya-sacca, for the Tathagata, the meaning of Nibana is the end of these mental defilements such as greed, anger, foolishness, fear, worry, jealousy. This is the meaning of Nibana to the Buddha. Now, sometimes in India, there was attachment to deep states of concentration as Nibana. That some of the yogis who could reach very subtle levels of concentration, they called that Nibana. And there were other times when there was attachment to sexual pleasure as Nibana. And so Nibana was considered the feeling of satisfaction after one has satisfied one's sexual desires. At one time this was also considered Nibana. But for the Buddha, the meaning of Nibana is the end of greed, anger, delusion, fear, and the other mental defilements. This is the meaning of Nibana for the noble ones. Now, all these things we've talked about have one thing in common, and that thing is coolness. So it is appropriate to call all of them Nibana. The question is, are these various kinds of Nibana, are they temporary or everlasting? Are they partial or complete? Are they illusory or are they genuine? This is the question. This is the important question. So there are many kinds of Nibana that we can experience in our life. For example, when there is, say, sexual desire, that desire is hot. It is burning. And so when the corresponding activity to satisfy that desire is carried out or performed, then there is a certain kind of Nibana. The burning of that sexual desire has cooled. And so that's a kind of Nibana. Or in the deep levels of concentration, which we call jhana, the absorption meditations, there is a cooling of the mind involved in those as well. But both of these kinds of Nibana are temporary. That sexual desire cools, but it's probably going to come back. And so that is only a temporary Nibana. And the Nibana of deep levels of concentration is also only temporary. That can't be sustained forever. It's necessary to come out of that. And then that kind of Nibana ends. So there are these temporary, incomplete kinds of Nibana. But there are also the long-lasting, the everlasting, full Nibana of the noble ones, of the Tathagata. And this happens when the causes of that burning, of the fires, of the hotness, when these causes are taken away and removed, such as removing sexual desire, that is a true kind of coolness, which is not temporary, but is long-lasting, lasts for the rest of one's life. This is the difference between the Nibana of common ordinary people and the Nibana of the saints. Now, for those of us, at this point, we can still use the Nibana, these worldly kinds of Nibana. Otherwise, we would burn ourselves up with all the various kinds of heat that comes from the defilements. But these worldly kinds of Nibana will always be impermanent and changing. So if we seek a complete end to those fires, then we must be interested in the Nibana of the Tathagata, of the Buddha. Now, please don't think that these two levels of Nibana is something we've made up today. This isn't something we just came up with on our own. This was a common way of looking at things since way, way back in India, before the Buddha's time. Even back then, there were these two ways of looking at Nibana. There's this ordinary, common worldly way, which was used by people who were still living, people who were living a regular household life with a job, a family, and a place in the community. So if one's life was in order, one's home was in good shape, one's children were doing okay, if one was a good person, wasn't always committing evil deeds, one was a gentleman or a gentlewoman, that was Nibana in the ordinary sense. There were places where it's recorded that if you have a good wife, then you are a cool husband. Or if you have a good husband, you're a Nibana wife. Or children, if one's parents are good, you have good parents, then we could say the children are Nibana, or cool. So this word was used in this very ordinary way for thousands of years. And because of the nature of the language, it was often transformed into nibuto, which means one who is cool, or one who has the state of coolness. So this was very common way back then. However, this is the common, ordinary coolness of one who is living the family life. It is not the coolness of the perfected ones, of the saints. There are many instances of the word Nibana being used in ordinary ways. There's a story about Prince Siddhartha. This was the young prince who later became the Buddha. While Prince Siddhartha was still living at home before he had left the royal luxurious life, he was walking past a group of people one day, and they were talking about him. And there was one young woman who said, "Who's this guy?" Or said, "Who is this?" Whoever he is, whoever is the mother of this young man, she has Nibbana'd. She is Nibbana. Whoever is the father of this man, he is Nibbana. Whoever is the wife of this man is Nibbana. Whoever is the child of this man is Nibbana. So this is how this word was used by many of the people of that time. So this is something worth considering and pondering so that we truly understand the meaning of the word Nibbana. Even in Thailand at the present day, this ordinary meaning of Nibbana is still used. You may remember the first night when some of you participated in the precept-taking ceremony. This is a very common tradition in Thailand. After the recitation of the 5 precepts, then the monk who gives the precepts will say, Silena Sukhating Yanti, happiness, or the precepts or morality brings happiness. Silena Poka Sambata, the precepts or morality brings wealth. Silena Niputing Yanti, the precepts or morality leads to Nibbana. So even here, we see this common meaning of the word Nibbana in this very, very common and popular ceremony, which is enacted throughout Thailand many times each day. But this kind of Nibbana that comes about through morality is the ordinary, common kind of Nibbana. When we live according to moral precepts, not killing, not stealing, etc., then we live a life that is relatively free of problems. Our family life will be okay, and our relationship with our neighbors will be fine. So by following the morality, then there will be a cool life of this sort. So here's another way that Nibbana is used. The cool life that results when one lives morally, free of problems within one's family and with one's neighbors. This is a kind of Nibbana for ordinary family people. Let's point out a very important detail about this Silena Niputing Yanti. This means one reaches or one realizes Nibbana through morality. The word Yanti means right now, right here, immediately. So in Silena Niputing Yanti, this isn't something that one has to wait for next week, next year, or in some future life. The Nibbana that is realized through morality is immediate. This cool life comes about as soon as there is morality. This is a very important point. What we're talking about Nibbana that is here and now, not sometime in the future, who knows when. We're talking about now. And so please be interested in this kind of Nibbana that is here and now. You don't have to worry so much about some later, distant Nibbana. Be interested in the Nibbana that is immediate. Whether it is the relative kind of Nibbana that comes through morality, or the ultimate kind of Nibbana of a Buddha. Next, I'd like to talk about another kind of Nibana, which is very, very important. But unfortunately, this is a kind of Nibana that we never seem to be interested in. We never pay much attention to it. It happens, and we go and enjoy it, but we never take the attention to really look at it carefully. This is the kind of Nibana that comes from voidness. I'm talking of a spontaneous, coincidental kind of voidness that happens to each of us every day. There are periods of time in our daily life which you may have never really stopped to notice, when the mind is free of the mental defilements. The mind is free of the various things we call hindrances. These defilements are fairly powerful things, such as greed, anger, hatred, fear, worry, which are very clear and disturbing in the mind. These we call the kilesa, or the defilements. There are some other things which are closely related to the kilesa, which are sort of a subcategory of kilesa, which we call the hindrances. These hindrances are more subtle and less apparent than the kilesa, but they disturb and pester the mind nonetheless. These are sensual desire, ill will, dullness of mind, agitation of mind, and doubt. These are what we know as the 5 hindrances. These hindrances are very common. The defilements are more powerful, but less common. Now, both the defilements and the nivarana arise and pass through the mind throughout the day. However, there are moments when the mind is completely free of the defilements and the hindrances. This moment of freedom may last for a minute or 2 or 3. And usually we don't really notice it. We just feel comfortable, pleasant, happy. We feel as if there are no real problems, that nothing is disturbing the mind. We may feel all this vaguely, but we usually never bother to look closely and see what's really happening and see this kind of emptiness clearly. This is a kind of Nibana. We can call it a sample of Nibana. This is a foretaste. Nature is giving us a free sample, but most of us just use up the free sample without using it wisely in order to learn about the real thing. So these spontaneous, natural, accidental kinds of temporary Nibbana are happening all the time. It's just we're never really interested in them. We take advantage of them without learning anything about it. So this is another kind of Nibbana which we can know each and every day of our life, because there are moments in each day when there is this kind of freedom from greed, lust, anger, hatred, fear, worry, jealousy, desire, doubt, dullness, agitation, all these kind of things. There are moments when they're gone. And that is a taste of Nibbana which you can all begin to know. Let's try this. Each of you ask yourself, what is the most comfortable, cool, free condition in your lives? Ask yourself this. At what time is the mind most comfortable, has the strongest feeling of well-being, of health? When does this happen? Does this happen when the mind is completely free of all emotions or not? Look at this. Look at the times when the mind, when you feel that everything is okay, where you have the strongest feelings of well-being, of comfort. See if this happens when there is a complete absence of emotions and feelings such as this is good, that's bad, or emotions such as happiness and sadness, love, anger. You need to look at yourself in this way and see when are you in the most sublime and subtle state of well-being? When do you feel the most fine and okay? Now, if we're interested in a life that is free and pure, then we need to start taking a look at these moments of freedom from the defilements. We can talk about freedom from any emotion. Emotions of liking and disliking, loving and hating, of fear, worry, of possession, all these kind of things. We need to begin to be aware of those moments when there is this freedom from the emotions. Then we can begin to see what it truly means to live a life that is free and pure. Now, this is a very special thing which we never really give enough attention to. And so we don't see that it is only because of these moments of freedom, of voidness, that the mind gets a rest from the constant disturbance of the emotions, of the defilements. If we were bothered by these emotions all the time, imagine what it would be like if the mind were pulled this way and that by constant emotions, without any rest, without any break. We'd surely go crazy. Isn't this what it means to be crazy, to always be pulled about by the emotions? And if that wasn't enough, this constant disturbance could kill us, because in these emotions there is no rest and there is no peace. There's just constant agitation, disturbance, and fire. So it's these small moments, these small respites and rests from the emotion that allows us to survive, that allows life to go on. It's these little moments of peace that give us a chance to recover and to continue. So these are something very, very special, almost magical which we need to see. To see it, to see these moments, to be aware of them, is something very magical. And that is the path to developing a true and complete understanding of Nibana. But most of us never bother to look for these little moments of freedom. Nature, or Dhamma, has given us these little moments as gifts. These arise in our lives to allow us to survive. These are very, very benevolent gifts given to us by nature. But we are generally so ungrateful, so selfish, that we have no gratitude towards these things. We don't even appreciate their great value. We have no understanding and appreciation of this. And for this reason, we are very ungrateful and disrespectful towards Dhamma. Dhamma works in certain ways. It gives us these opportunities, these little respites. But when we are ungrateful, then there is the inevitable punishment of dukkha. This is how it works. Dhamma gives us these gifts, and when we don't appreciate them, then we have to suffer through the disturbances and agitation of all the emotions and defilements that we get ourselves into. So we need to begin to be aware of these things, get over this ungratitude, and be able to see what Nibana really is like. To, with wisdom and understanding, sample these tastes of Nibana, and then grow in understanding. See that these are the things that save us from craziness and from death. It's these little rest periods that allow us to survive. This is something that needs to be understood. So everything that has been said so far ought to make it clear that the practice of Dhamma means to make one's life cool, or the making of a cool life, the creating of a cool life, is the practice of Dhamma. These are the same thing, the practice of Dhamma and cool life. It's the same thing. So we want to make this point very, very clear, that having Dhamma is having a cool life. Practicing Dhamma is practicing a cool life. You've probably all heard of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. This is a very common way of summarizing the practice of the middle way. Sila, Samadhi, Panya are a way of summarizing the practice of a cool life. Sila is to prepare life, to order life through morality and correct behavior, so that life is ready to be cool. Then Samadhi, or meditation, is we limit or we get rid of or prevent them from arising, the various fires which burn the mind. And then Panya, or wisdom, is what destroys the cause of the fires. And so sila, samadhi, and panya are three ways of developing and maintaining a cool life. Morality, sila, orders life so that it can be lived in a cool way. Meditation limits, controls, and gets rid of the fires that can arise. And then wisdom, or panya, will destroy the cause of all the fires. So this is one way of looking at the practice of a cool life. Another way of looking at morality, meditation, and wisdom is that morality leads to physical coolness. When our physical behavior and our speech is in line, when it's good and proper, then there is morality, and we have physical or material coolness. Then through meditation, the mind is gotten in shape, and there is mental coolness. And then last, through wisdom, there arises spiritual coolness. So sila, samadhi, panya bring about physical, mental, and spiritual coolness. Now these can all three be done at the same time. And there are techniques or practices that can do so, such as anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. In mindfulness of breathing, there can be morality. When it's practiced properly, there is morality leading to a cool body or physical coolness. There is proper meditation leading to mental coolness, and there is the development of wisdom, which leads to spiritual coolness. All of these three things happening at the same time in the practice of mindfulness of breathing. Please reflect upon this natural fact until you understand it and see its truth. So to summarize what we've said so far, the practice of Dhamma is the making of a cool life, or the practice of Dhamma is making life cool. Now, we are going to give you a very precise definition of Dhamma. Please listen very, very carefully and understand the meaning of this definition. This is the most proper and correct definition of the word Dhamma. So please listen very, very carefully. Dhamma is a system of practice. Notice that it's a system. It's not just one thing. It's not just you do just one thing. It's a system of many things that must be practiced. That means must be applied and used in daily life. It's not enough to just study, listen, and think about things. There must be practice. So Dhamma is a system of practice that is correct according to the objectives of humanness, or is correct according to the goal of humanity. Whatever the purpose is for human beings, for our lives here on this planet, the Dhamma must be a system of practice that is correct and appropriate towards that objective. It must also be correct according to the law of nature. everything is nature, and all of this is governed by the law of nature. And so our practice, our system of practice, must be correct according to this law of nature. Otherwise it won't work. Another way of saying this, especially for those of us who believe in God, is to say that our practice must be correct and appropriate according to the will of God. If we go against God's will, our practice won't work. So for those of you who have faith in God, in a God, then you can see it in this way. But for Buddhists, we don't have a belief in this kind of a God. And so we say that our practice must be correct according to the law of nature. And also this system of practice must be correct according to our human evolution, both in the sense of the evolution of each being from childhood to a teenager and into adult. This evolution of each body and mind through the stages of life. And also in the sense of the evolution of humanity. Whenever the ape man began to develop into something that we can call truly human, and then the evolution of the human species through the various stages of civilization, from primitives up until modern civilization. So this is a very precise and correct definition of Dhamma, a system of practice that is correct and appropriate regarding the goal of humanity, regarding the law of nature, and regarding the evolution of man. This is the most proper definition of Dhamma. Please remember it. And there's one last bit. And this system of practice is for the benefit of both oneself and for the benefit of others. This practice is for the benefit of everyone. So let me repeat it all once more. Dhamma is a system of practice that is correct and appropriate regarding the goal or purpose of humanity or of humanness, regarding the law of nature or the will of God, regarding the evolution of humanity, and it is useful and beneficial for both oneself and for others. That is, for everyone. So if we remember this definition and live and practice according to it, then it will be certain that we experience the cool life. Not the cold life, but the cool life will be the certain outcome if we practice according to the definition that you have just been given. So this is the point of life and the point of our practice, the cool life. And this is the way to experience it, for it to come about. Now, if you'd like to have a taste of it, a sample, before you commit yourself, then pay attention to those moments when there are no fires, when there are no emotions, and sample that coolness and see if it interests you. Pay attention to these moments. This kind of coolness is not absolute, but it's a sample, it's a taste of the absolute coolness of complete Nibana. So this is something that is available to you. We think that all of you are interested in and searching for the cool life, but that you may not be aware of it. This is true of most of us. We're looking for something. We're looking for coolness, but we're never quite aware of what it is we want or what it is we're looking for. Like, remember the hippies. The hippies were looking for a cool life. They're looking for a life of coolness and tranquility and peace. But they didn't know where it was. They didn't know how to find it, how to achieve it, how to realize it. And so they were unable to savor it. So maybe we're all just hippies, but we now have some information to help us to genuinely discover, practice, and live the cool life, the life of coolness. The meaning of human perfection is the cool life, is the practice of Dhamma. Human perfection, or a life of coolness, and the practice of Dhamma, these three things are all the same thing. It's the same meaning. So this is what we've been talking about here. There is the temporary, momentary, accidental, spontaneous moments of coolness when we are undisturbed by any emotions, when there are these little breathers and rests from all the disturbances of life. And we can begin to study these moments until we have a fuller and deeper realization of them, until we live them more often for longer periods of time, until these little rests grow and expand ultimately into a Nibana, into a coolness that is total and perfect. This is a possibility that we all have. Now, when I talk about a system of practice, there is one system of practice that is sufficient in itself. This is anapanasati. Let me point out to you, so that you are very clear, in that this practice of anapanasati in itself is sufficient to do all the work that is needed to realize a cool life. Not just the temporary, momentary freedom from emotion that we've talked about, but also the complete and absolute, ultimate life of coolness. So this can be achieved through anapanasati if you understand the practice and apply it properly. So the perfection of humanity, the cool life, and the practice of Dhamma, these are all the same thing. We hope that you will be interested in these and will apply yourself to them and use the time given you at this retreat in order to develop anapanasati, this one system of practice which can bring you to the life of coolness, the life of spiritual coolness and tranquility. So we hope you're interested in this, and on this point we will end today's talk.